Hello everybody, welcome to another video. I have decided to create a series of videos to show you how to properly build a Revit model from start to finish. And for that, I pick a project which is a lofty nature retreat in Quebec that I found on dwell.com. I will provide the link on the description. The reason why I picked this project is because I think the shapes and form of the building is simple enough for beginners to build by using only out-of-the-box Revit components and families. With that said, the building that we're about to build may not look exactly like the one that you see on the picture. What we are trying to achieve here is we're trying to quickly learn basic Revit modeling. So we're going to avoid getting bogged down with the nitty-gritty. In my class, we will build this building again the second time, and the second time we will try to get as close as possible to what we see in the picture. If time allowed this semester, I will be making video for that as well. In addition to shapes and form of the building, and the fact that the project is 2 stories, it allows me to cover most of basic Revit modeling tool. Also keep in mind that I made these videos for my student and we've gone over it in class once already. So I'm going to be going through it pretty fast. Feel free to pause or rewind if you need to. In this series of videos is mostly going to be a how-to videos. That means I will give no detailed explanation of the things that I do. Instead, if I feel that further explanation is needed, I will provide you with links on the top right corner of your screen that will take you to previous videos that I've made on certain topics. And lastly, before we begin, I want to encourage you to become familiar with the building that we're about to build. Review all of the photos and floor plans so that you know what we're building. On the description, there's also a link for you to download the handout that I gave my student. This way you can follow along. I apologize for the long introduction, but I feel that it is necessary for all of us to be on the same page before we begin. Without further ado, let's get started. So to start, we're going to have to create a new project. So under model, I'm going to go to new. And for this project, I'm going to use Imperial Architectural Template. Make sure that project is checked, then click OK. When start a new project, usually Revit will start with level 1. The first warning that I want to give to new users is that there is very little difference between the floor plan and ceiling plan as far as the way it looks. So to avoid working on ceiling plan by mistake, I'm going to collapse the ceiling plan. When start a new project, I like to start with column grids and building levels. Since we're on the floor plan, I'm going to start with column grid. For this project, I need 5 vertical grids and 5 horizontal grids. I'm going to start with verticals. Under Architecture tab, Datum panel, select Grid. Then place your column grid. I'm going to just roughly place these column grids, then precisely move them into place later using permanent dimension. This method is called sketch then modify. Next, I'm going to place horizontal grids. But this time I'm going to rename to grid line A. Then the next one that I place will be grid line B, C, D, and so on. Once I roughly place the grid, I can use permanent dimension to place them exactly where they need to be. So on the quick access toolbar, select dimension. And first I will give the overall dimension, then dimension between each grid. I'll do the same for the horizontal grid lines. I will later on use the individual dimensions to help me place those grid lines precisely. As far as the overall dimensions, I will use them to help me verify that those individual dimensions were correct. To get out from the dimension command, click on modify. The next thing to do now is to move those grid lines precisely into place. The locations are as seen on the screen, and the PDF version of this is provided under the video description. Let me zoom in. To move an object using permanent dimension, first you need to select the object that you want to move. In this case, is grid line number 2. Then the dimension turned blue, indicating that it is now ready to be modified. I want to change the distance between grid line 1 and grid line 2, so I need to change this dimension. The dimension is 29 feet 6 inches, so on the keyboard I will type 29, space 6, then enter. Next is the distance between grid line 2 and 3. Three and 4. Lastly, 4 and 5. The total distance between grid line 1 and 5 should be 48 feet. Looks like it is. Next, we're going to move the horizontal grid line into place. For this, I need the dimension between grid line A and B to be 8 feet 6 inches, and in this case, I want grid line B to move, so I'm going to select grid line B. Once again, the dimension turned into blue, indicating that it is ready to be manipulated. So I'm going to click on the 12 feet here and change it to 8 space 6. Distance between B and C is 10 feet 6 inches. Distance between C and D is 10 feet 9 inches. And distance between D and E is 12 feet 3 inches. With regards to sketch then modify method, there are a few mistakes that beginner makes. First is forgetting to select the object that you want to move, then go directly into the blue colored dimension. By making that mistake, the intended object that you want to move will stay in place and the unintended object selected will get moved instead. The next mistake that beginner makes is forgetting to select any object at all, then went right ahead and select the dimension. When you select the dimension once and you don't see anything happen, then you double click it. When you double click the dimension, you get this dialog box. If your intention was to move an object, but instead you get this dialog box, know that you made this second mistake. And to fix that, just cancel out from this dialog box, select the object, then make your modification. Next, we're going to work on building levels. The location for building levels are as seen on the screen. Once again, the PDF version of what you see on the screen is provided under video description. To work on building levels, we need to be on an elevation. It doesn't matter what elevation you're on. In fact, you can even be on a section. Because work done on building levels on one elevation will get carried throughout all elevations and all sections as well. But before I move on to the elevation, I want to move all of my grid lines so that they are kind of centered on the plan view. Here I'm going to hit escape once to get out from the current command, then type ZE on my keyboard for zoom extent. So what did I mean by center of the view? If you imagine a line that connects this triangle to this triangle, and also this triangle to this triangle, the intersection between these two lines is center of the view. So here I'm going to select everything including the dimension and move the center of that mass roughly where the intersection is. Next, I will go to the south elevation. As per the handout, I need level 2 to be 9 feet above level 1. So I'm going to click once on level 2. Click on the 10 feet and change that to 9. Next, I'm going to need to make another level above level 2. So while I have level 2 selected, I'm going to go to modify levels. Then click on copy. Click on an empty space, then drag this new level up 5 feet above level 2. I'm going to type 5 on my keyboard, then hit enter to confirm. Click once on an empty space to get out from the current command. The new level has been created, except that I don't want to name this level level 3. So I'm going to slow double click on level 3 and rename it to level 2 TP for top plate. Click on an empty space to deselect. Now we have all the building levels that we need, and they're all where we need them to be. Let's tidy things up. Now if I go to the opposite elevation, which is north, you should see that all building levels are there, same as east elevation. We're going to tidy things up here as well. Finally, west elevation. Now that we are done setting up building levels, we're going to go back to the floor plan. I'm going to go to level 1. And before we move on to the next steps, I'm going to select all of the column grids and pin them into place. Now we are ready to move on to the next steps. On the screen, you see that there are two types of walls that we're going to need. And since this is going to be a basic modeling video, we're going to use generic walls. For the exterior, we're going to use 6 inches generic walls. And for the interior, we're going to use 4 inches generic walls. The PDF version of this handout can be downloaded from the link provided on the video description. Let's go ahead and close our inactive views. Click on an empty space, then type ZE to zoom extent. To get to the wall command, we're going to need to be on Architecture tab. Click once on the top half of the wall button. Then under Type Selector, we're going to look for generic 6 inches and generic 4 inches. Looks like we have generic 6 inches, so we're going to start with the exterior walls. With generic 6 inches walls selected, on the ribbon, under Draw panel, I'm going to select Rectangle. Then on the option bar, under Unconnected, I will select Level 2. Wall Location Line, I will select Core Face Exterior. There's nothing else that I need to modify here on the option bar. I will verify everything once again on Property Palette. We're using generic 6 inches wall. Location line is Core Face Exterior. Base constraint is level 1 with no offset. And top constraint is level 2, again with no offset. Now I am ready to place the walls. When I place the walls, I'm going to place them roughly where they need to be, then move them into place later. Also, I want to make sure that the core face exterior is facing outward instead of inward. Then I will place 4 more walls for the smaller building, and again, I'm going to make sure that the core face exterior is facing outward instead of inward. And finally, we will verify wall location line for every single wall once again. Click on the wall, and the 2 dots on the wall indicate wall location line. If it is near the outside of the building, then our core face exterior is facing outward like it's supposed to. If for some reason your location line is facing the wrong way, you can click on the flip grid to flip your location line. Now that everything looks good, I'm going to align all of the walls to grid lines. The command that I'm going to use is align or AL on the keyboard. First, we will select the grid line. Then we will select core face exterior to align with the grid. Be sure to lock the 2 elements together by clicking on the padlock. This will ensure that walls and grid lines will move together as one. And since the grid lines are pinned, walls and grid line won't get moved easily by accident. Now that we are done with the first level, we can move on and work on the second level. On the project browser, double-click on level 2. With level 2 as the current view, we're going to place 4 more walls, which are going to be the generic 4 inches. On the option bar, we will make sure that the connected height is set to level 2 top plate, and the location line is set to core face exterior. Once that is confirmed, double-check again on the property palette. Location line is set to core face exterior. Base constraint is set to level 2 with no offset. Top constraint is set to level 2 top plate, again with no offset. Once that is confirmed, we're now ready to place some walls. When you follow along, make sure that core face exterior is facing outward. Now we are ready to align and lock the core face exterior to grid line. Don't forget to click on the padlock to lock the alignment. I will stop this video right here and we will continue to place the interior walls on the next video. Thanks for watching and see you again soon.